Okay, good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to you all, dear students, dear guests, to this new lecture, this new encounter at the shores of translation. In fact, this encounter is a continuation of a previous one. We had it, I think, 2 days ago, when we addressed the question of translation as interpretation, and we discussed with our guest speaker at that time, Professor Philip Towner, as a case study, we've taken the Bible translation. We are going to see now translation also as interpretation, but the translation of the Quran, and more particularly the voice of women, means our guest speaker today is going to investigate women's translations of the Quran. Of course, you know that there is an issue with that, and there is heated debate, and scholars of Islam, they say that Quran cannot be translated, but rather we translate the meanings of the Quran. So I will mute everyone. So the meanings of the Quran. Perhaps we are not going to discuss that, but to discuss more particularly feminist translation strategies, how language is being made to accommodate a gender approach. Our guest speaker, Dr. Reem Hassen, has kindly accepted our invitation to talk about that subject. Reem Hassen has an MA and a PhD in translation and comparative cultural studies from the University of Warwick. She worked as a research associate at the University of Cambridge and is now a bilingual education officer at Durham City Council in the United Kingdom. Her main interests include women's translations of the Quran, as I said earlier, gender and translation, in addition to feminist translation theory and translations of classical Arabic poetry into English, French, and German. I would like to welcome her very warmly, and I hand her over the floor without delay. You have the floor, Dr. Hassen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Actually, Hammouda forgot to mention that I'm actually from Tunisia. So.
Oh, yes, sorry. And more particularly from Zarzis. And by the way, we have a very beautiful song praising the Bnet Zarzis, so the girls of Zarzis.
Okay. So أنا أحكي بتونسي لكن باش نفسر لكم الريسيرش نتاعي لازم نحكي بالإنجليزي. Okay. So there are a few things I need to say before I start my presentation. I've been working on women translators of the Quran for around 11 years, and I first started it as a challenge because I was talking with a very big professor here in Durham, and I was telling him, look, you know, there are women translation of the Quran, and he was really, really adamant that no women has translated the Quran. So my research actually started from that day, and I found 9 translations of the Quran by women. However, 5 of them are team translation, so sometimes it's a male-female translator, it's a husband and a wife, or a father and daughter, or a team translator, men and women. But today I'm going to talk only about 3 translators who I find really interesting, and I would like to share with you my my findings. And I need also to point out that these are my findings. It's not my opinion. I'm just presenting my research. I know some of you might find some of the interpretations or translations very difficult to accept, but this is what is happening here. These are women translations of the Quran, and from my point of view, there is no wrong or right translation, but there is good or bad translation. So every translator has to think about their implications. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you. So the 3 translators I'm going to talk about today are Fatma Zaida, Camille Zalmeski, and Leila Bakhtiar. I'm going to discuss with you first their, I'm just putting this in big screen. So I'm going to talk about their feminist strategies and how they applied such strategies to the Quran. I know a lot of people think of Quran translation or religious translation as a faithful rendition of the original, but actually there is no such faithful rendition of the original in this case. The key strategies I summed up here are 3. So I found that there are a lot of intervention and transformation of the original text. There are some attempts to challenge patriarchal language and imagery. I will explain imagery when I get to the point. And there is also a tendency to question established meanings and interpret keywords. Okay, so my first translator, her name is Fatma Zaida. She's actually a slave maid, Jaria. She's the first woman to translate the Quran into French, even though a lot of people think that Masson, who is the French translator, is the only woman to have translated the Quran into French. But in my research, I was able to find this translation, which dates from the 18th century. Fatma Zaida is a convert to Islam, and she translated the Quran probably from other languages. I don't think she was a speaker of Arabic, and her translation is not very good quality. Her French is not the best, but she used her translation to express a lot of ideas she had about women and women's position in society. One of her key strategies actually is to change the order of the chapters. We know that in the Quran, the surahs are arranged from the longest to the shortest, but Zaida rearranged the surahs according to chronological order. So she followed the date rather than the length. I don't know why she used that strategy, but it's clear she wanted to put her own mark on her work. She also inserted a lot of ideas. As a slave, she wanted women to have better treatment from their masters. She also introduced a lot of ideas about marriage, divorce, a number of children women could have. She actually instructed men to have only one child, and she also made it an obligation for women to be educated from young age. And also she introduced the idea for divorced women to have housing, and this housing should be sponsored by the state. Just to give you an example of her interventions, the degree of interventions she has. For example, this is the original text, and it's how much intervention she put in the text. So the length of her translation gives you an idea on how much she intervenes in her text. And I'll give you another example of the ideas she brought to the text. I chose this one because, of course, it doesn't exist in the Quran, but she inserted it as part of the Quran. What is also interesting is that she used the strategies of the Quran, like she orders believers not to do something, and then she gives them rewards if they listen, and then she also tells them that there will be punishment if they don't listen. Here, I'll read this one. Exigez la castration des marchands des femmes, faites-le, ô croyants, et suivez les préceptes du livre sacré. Mes promesses sont immuables et les parvis célestes vous sont destinés. Qui est plus vrai que moi dans ces paroles? So I translated into English myself, which is the same thing. Actually, Fatma Zayda introduced this because she wanted to protect women who are slaves from being raped or used as sex slaves by their merchants. Okay, so the other thing about Zayda's translation, it's still really unknown. It still needs a lot of research and a lot of investigation. The only copy I could find was in York University, and I'm hoping that I will be able to find more information about her. Okay, so I move on to the next translation. This is actually the book cover of Zayda's translation. I will talk about it more later. Just wanted to show you a bigger image of it. So the next translation is Camille Adams Zalmeski. Camille Adams Zalmeski is an American convert to Islam. She's a Sufi, and she used to have a Sufi website for a long time, but now it's not active anymore. Her translation is not a complete translation of the Quran. There is only 365 verses. So her idea is that to translate some verses of the Quran for daily prayer. The strategies she used in her translation are mainly concerned and the patriarchal imagery. So in her translation, she uses gender-inclusive words and pronouns. She focuses on feminine imagery, and also she introduced some new gender-inclusive pronouns. Okay, this is similar to what a lot of feminist translators are using to challenge patriarchal language and to make sure that women are treated equally, even in spoken language. So I'll give you an example of imagery. This is Surat al-Shams. So Surat al-Shams, it's when you read it in Arabic, وَالشَّمْسُ وَضُحَاهَا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وَالشَّمْسُ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرُ إِذَا تَلَاهَا وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا جَلَّاهَا وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَاهَا. A lot of translators, even apart from feminist translators, struggled with this verse because in English the sun is masculine, but in Arabic the shams is feminine. So and you know the sound of this verse is really feminine, so there is a lot of feminine imagery. But when you translate it into English, all this feminine imagery is lost. For example, Arbery, who is one of the most famous English translators of the Quran, when he translated this verse, he translated the sun as him. So as you see in the verse, there is by the sun and his morning brightness, and by the moon when she follows him, and by the day when it displays him, and by the night when it enshrouds him. So here there is a lot of masculine image instead of the feminine image that is in the original text. But Sells, who's also another Quran translator, respected this feminine imagery, and he changed the English language and translated the sun as her, by the moon when it follows her, by the way it displays her, by the night when it veils her. Another translator, Fakhri, opted for the middle way. So he translated the sun as it, which is actually the proper English because it's neither masculine, neither feminine. But still, it doesn't convey the feminine image in the original text. For many women translators of the Quran, this has been a big problem to keep this gender-neutral image. The problem is that in English or also in French, God is mainly viewed as a masculine, and but in Arabic, Allah is understood as gender-neutral. That's why Zalmeski, here this is an extract from her preface. She introduced a new pronoun into the English language to express that God or Allah should be understood as a gender-neutral being. So here I read what she wrote. Who, the pronoun of divine presence. All words in Arabic have a gender grammatically ascribed to them as they do in French and Spanish. Although Allah is referred to with the third person masculine, huwa, it is universally understood that Allah's essence is beyond gender or indeed any qualification. So, based on this idea that Allah should be understood in neutral gender, Zalmeski not only introduced a new pronoun who, but also she uses he and she to refer to God. But in this verse, actually, she only uses both of them, but in other verses, she uses only she sometimes. So she alternates to make sure that God is understood in a gender-neutral sense. And this idea of understanding the supreme being in a gender-neutral sense is very important for women's equality, because if you think of God as a masculine, that gives men more power and more superiority over women. But if you think of him, her, in a gender-neutral sense, that makes it easier for women to be in equal position as men. Okay? So this is also the book cover of Zalmeski's translation. And I will discuss it again a little bit later. And I arrived to the last translator, Layla Bakhtiar. She's also an American convert to Islam. She is the daughter of Iranian father and a Catholic American mother. She translated the Quran in 2007, and her translation was published. So, it caused a lot of controversy. So the key strategies she used is mainly question of the construction of language and meaning. In her translations, she used gender-inclusive words. She attempted to make the feminine visible, and she also introduced a new interpretation of key Quranic verse, which we'll discuss in a few minutes. Okay. So this is one of Bakhtiar's key strategies. She introduced this letter F between brackets and this is how she explains it. When words in a verse refer directly to woman or women or wife or wives, and the corresponding pronouns such as they, them, those, I have placed an F after the word to indicate that the word refers to the feminine gender specifically. So this problem, this strategy solves actually two problems. The first one is because English is not a gender-marked language, and the second one also because Bakhtiar wanted to make sure that the reader realizes that women are mentioned in the Quran. So this is an example of her translation. This is the one. So as you can see, visually, you could see a lot of F's and F's. And this is also one of her most important interpretations. So this is verse 434, where, or what they call it here, the wife-beaten verse. Here the key word is daraba, but as you can see, Bakhtiar has translated the word daraba as to go away. She explains this, that she actually wrote a lot of articles and a lot of she had a lot of TV interviews to explain her interpretation of the word daraba, and she said that following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and according to the Arabic lexics, the word daraba has more than 12 meanings, and she thinks that the best way to translate the word daraba in this verse is to go away. Okay, and this is her book cover. I think I'll stop here. So I open the conversation. I have one question to ask. If
yeah, please go ahead,
yes.
Reem.
Okay, so here, so while I was showing you the book covers of the three women translators, I just wanted to see if anyone can see the difference between the book covers and the other book covers. If anyone can find any difference, like spot the difference between women translation and the other translators.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Reem, for this insightful presentation on women's translation of the Quran. I start to see now people requesting the floor. You know that these subjects always raise heated debate because it is touching upon the sacred. But as Reem has put it at the outset, that she is a researcher, and the research she has conducted is descriptive. She described what is there without any ideology behind or position. So I hope that questions asked should take this into account. Great. We have Nada, Duha, Taqwa, Wisal, Sami, Nisreen, Abir, etc. So how about if we take them in rounds, Reem? Can you,
yes.
Rounds of 3 or 4,
yes.
you take note if
yes.
possible.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah. Duha, please go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
Aslema, thank you. This is like Dr. Hammouda said, it's a very tricky subject and thorny, and I'm so glad to have discovered today that there are women actually who had translated previously the Holy Quran. I think that what they did was very great. My question now is, how can we actually transcend the patriarchal version of Quran if they are actually invading the whole market. And I am sure that these copies that were translated by women were not as sold as ones translated by men. And how can we actually convince them that the Quran was not made by men for men? It was actually made by a lot of people. It's a work in progress, because interpretation moves and keeps moving and keeps changing. And I think that interpretation should not stop at 2007 or 2008. It should keep coming. We should keep translating the book with the new view of the word, the new changes that keep coming.
Good.
So that's my question wrapped in a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. ندى بن عون. I think
very much for the lecture.
yes. The sound quality is poor. Can you speak closer to the mic, please, Nada?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes,
Yeah, better.
Thank you for the lecture, Dr. Hassan. I just wanted to comment on the book covers. I don't really have a question now. The book covers, I think the third one is with the flowers. It's very aesthetic, very feminine.
Yes.
The second one, I think I see some light.
Yes.
I don't see them right. That means that women are also enlightened. They are not, reserved to second class.
Yes.
They are less important, let's say, than men, or inferior. I don't know about the first cover. It looks not neutral to me, actually.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Wisal, please.
Hi.
Hey.
Can I start by saying Mahlik, Dr. Reem, in all ways. And we're really glad to have you here. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Okay, so my question is, well, I've got three actually. But first, I've read that a new version translated by Iranian Americans, this 3 women version, will be published, and it came after Muslim feminists from around the world vowed to create a more friendly religion towards women. Don't you think that Islam and Quran have already honored women like no other holy texts? And if this were for softening purposes, don't you think there's the risk of torturing maybe some holy verses of the Quran? Okay, and my second question goes as, do you have an idea about interpreting, or are you familiar with interpreting?
She is a practicing
Quran,
interpreter also,
verses?
so she can take that question too. Thank you very much. Sami.
Yes, thank you very much, Hammouda, for this very nice topic, and thank you, Reem, for your presentation. It is quite a novelty for me, to hear about attempts at translation of the Quran done by women first before calling them feminists. I am a bit reluctant to accept the idea that any piece of literature, if we consider the Quran as a piece of literature, should be translated or even read with the lens of a gender. And after I heard you, Reem, I have the impression that the three examples you laid down are not translations. We go much beyond than translation. They are political actions. If we consider that translation is the operation to convey a meaning between two linguistic and metalinguistic systems that are different. It seems to me that the translator of Arabic or even of French should respect the inherent features of the language he's conveying the message through. So if Arabic has a gender for table, and that gender is not the same in the second language, you gave the example of the sun and the moon, it seems to me in order for you to be a traducteur, a traduttore, and not a traditore, a trader, you know the difference. In order for you to be a real translator, you have to respect the inherent features of each language. If we accept the idea of translating any piece of literature, not only the Quran, with the lens of gender, then that is not translation. That is a political act. And this is my opinion. I don't know whether you share it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sami. It's a good question indeed, yes. Let's take a last question in this round. Nisreen Talous, please.
Hello. Thank you for being our guest today. My question is, according to you, what are the reasons behind women's absence in translating and interpreting the Holy Book of Quran? Are they silenced by patriarchal supremacy, or is it because of lack of resources, since it is work that should be held with delicately?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so
Over to you. Yes, go ahead.
yes. So I start with the first question. Thank you all for your questions. The first one is about how can women actually translate the Quran and be able to publish the Quran. What a lot of people don't know, actually, one of the most popular translations of the Quran published by Saudi Arabia is done by 3 women, 3 American converts to Islam. It's a translation by Sahih International. But this translation doesn't mention that it's 3 women who translated it. Also, this translation remains, the translators remain anonymous, but this translation is also very patriarchal. So the women did not intervene in a way to make it sure that there is a quality in the interpretation. So these are translations that are very patriarchal. But there are actually few translations by women, but they are either using men's names or they're using pseudonyms. Okay. Another thing is there's a lot of censorship, of course. If women are not in Western countries, they're not able, they'll never be able to publish their translations in an Islamic country. This happened to a translator, I think she's from Egypt. I heard she was going to translate the Quran a few years ago, but her translation never saw the light. That I think there is another translator and her father. What they tried to publish their translation, which is also very modern translation, very gender equal, but they didn't manage to translate it. So what they did is they published it online. So that's what most women are doing now. They're either publishing online or finding their way of publishing for themselves, because they know there is a lot of resistance to their translations. And there is also this idea that all translators of the Quran must be scholars in Islam. And that's and also the idea that all scholars of Islam are male. And that's what makes it difficult for women to publish, and also it's more difficult for their translations to be in mosques. So all the translations in mosques in the West are by men, or if they are by women, the women are using pseudonyms. Okay. I think there was the second question about me interpreting. I work as an interpreter, so I interpret every day. Sorry.
No problem at all. No problem at all.
No, just a minute, I'm sorry.
No problem. You can mute and I sound. So always this is the overlap between private space and public space. But it's always very good. But private space has to override public space in certain circumstances. So we are going to wait for Reem to answer the other questions. And then we are going to take another round of questions. We'll be having Abir Alwi.
I'm back.
Yes, Muhammad Salah, Haisa, and then Salwa Al-Battut, and then Samar. So, yes, back to you. Reem,
Yes.
go ahead.
So, what was saying? Yeah, so there's a question about the implications. For me, I know everybody thinks that you should be faithful to the original text. You should do respect the original language features. But there is actually a lot of research done on the impact of language. Okay, and this is why feminist criticism of language is based on. Hello? Hello?
We are hearing.
Yes,
We can hear you. Please proceed.
Yes. So this is what the feminist critique of language is based on, is what is the impact of language on us, on our lives, okay? So it is good that the Quran exists and it is an eternal text. It's good that it's here. And it's also good that we are reinterpreting the text with every generation. It should not be set as a stone. It should be interpreted and reinterpreted according to our needs. In our society, I think a lot of people are not aware how much women are suffering, okay? How countries and states have used the Quran to oppress women, to give them a very low position, and that's not fair, okay? And if women are translating the text because they need to, and sometimes it seems like the Quran is the property of men. No, the Quran is our property, it's the property of women as well. We read it every day, and when the Quran speaks to me, I don't see what other scholars, male scholars, actually see. And that's why women need to interpret the Quran for themselves. And that's why I think Zalmeski, Bakhtiyar, and Zaida are interpreting the Quran in that way, because that's how it speaks to them. That's how they read it. This is how they read it. And this is, I think, how you read the text. Sometimes it's more important how you want people to read it. Okay? And this is because to be honest, me too, when I read the first time Zaida's translation, I was shocked because I did not recognize the Quran in any way or form, the way she presented it, the way she really, I never thought that someone could be so free with the holy text. But then when I did the research about her life, her journey from slave to where she became Jariya, I understood why she needed to translate the Quran in that way, why she put specific things about women, about education, about childbirth. I think she wanted to deal with the problems in her society. And that's actually the role of religion in that time. And she found the best way to make people understand that there is something with society. And she couldn't go out and say, oh, look, you have to do this. No, she found something that people will listen to, which is the Quran, and she translated it that way so people could actually listen and realize that there is a problem in society, that women are being oppressed, women are suffering, slaves are suffering, and no one is listening to their voice. Okay? So this is about why Zaida translated the Quran that way. Zalmeski is the same thing, Zalmeski is a Sufi, and in Sufism they put a little emphasis on the spirit. So, and that's why in her book cover is white. So the whiteness actually is a symbol both of femininity and also of the spirit, which is more important than the body. And her translation, she actually does not translate any of the gender-related verses. She only focuses on the spiritual ones, and she uses the pronoun who, and she claims that it's her invention, because in English, which is also her language, I think a lot of the Western speakers, they struggle even with the English language, because the English language is dominated also with masculine references because of the Bible. And that's another way why they're trying to distinguish themselves from Bible translation, by using such strategies to make the Quran distinct from the Bible and biblical references. I don't know if I answered all the questions. Hammouda?
I please just...
I think so. Yes, Sami, go ahead.
Yes, please, thank you. Because I think that my question related mainly to the translation aspect. Do you consider that these three examples you laid down are proper translation work? As I told you, I suggest that these are not translations. These are, as you said, interpretations. Why do I say that? I totally agree with you when you say that the world, men and women, deserves to have a gender-neutral understanding of the Quran. I don't care about the language that will convey the message. And women deserve to interpret the Quran as well in a way to reflect their positions, to reflect their interest, which is a right. It is not something that they should strive for endlessly.
Okay.
I'm here talking only about the process of translation.
Okay, Sami, can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
I will answer your question, but I will share my screen with you because I want to show you translation.
Yeah.
Mix of this.
Because I was not, my question was not about women being entitled to have an interpretation of the Quran to give them their, or to give balance between men and women, and they're entitled to. Of course, we all agree on that.
Yeah.
I was talking about the process of translation, and especially the first example you gave.
Yeah.
I think it was the verses following الرجال قوامون على النساء.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
It was 3 lines in Arabic and something like 15 lines in English. And
Okay.
I read a bit, and it was not translation, it was interpretation.
Okay, I'll show you another translation, okay, but by mail. And this is a very popular translation. And I would like to know what you think of it, because let me see if I can share. I'd like to share the screen with you.
Yes, but in the meantime, I would like to make an announcement that we wish to continue this very nice and rich debate on the translation of Quran, the translation of the Islamic discourse with another guest speaker. And I would like to break very good news that Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, who is yet another American convert to Islam, he's a scholar, and we are just discussing now the time of the talk, and we have decided about the date because there is a 10-hour time difference between Tunis and California. So I wanted to break this news also and to invite you all to this talk. I think it will be taking place on, and I have to check this, on the 4th of June. Most likely around 8 p.m.
Okay.
Over to you, Reem.
So I have a translation, but I cannot really share it. I don't know why. It's translation, or try again.
You can show it on your computer and then you share your screen.
No, but it's not okay.
It's not working?
No, it's not allowing me.
Computer cohort, sir. Co-animator. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've done that already.
Can you see it?
Yes, we do. But
okay, can you read it?
the characters.
Men, the characters.
Okay, let's go. So this is Zaida's translation.
Mm-hmm.
And this is okay. Should be here. Yeah, this one.
Yes. Yeah, we can read it. Yes.
Okay, so I'll allow you to read this one, and please tell me if this is translation or interpretation.
Men are the protectors of their women, for they surpass them in strength, intellectual acumen, and social skills. A male doctor is better than a female doctor. This is the translation, you mean? Okay. A male laborer is better than a female laborer. This is not a translation, of course, because it's adding to the original text.
True.
I'm talking here merely on the aspect of faithfulness to the text, to the content.
Yeah.
This is interpretation.
Mm-hmm. So my point is, so Zaida should, anybody who sees Zaida's translation think, wow, this is what she has done is really too much. But actually, this is a very popular translation by Colin Turner, and it's presented as a translation of the Quran. Okay, I have my personal views of translation because I read the Quran in the original text, so I don't need to translate it. But I think for non-Arabic speakers who are really struggling of accessing the real meaning of the Quran, this is the only way. Translation are the only way for them to read the Quranic text. And I have read thousands, almost all translations of the Quran in different languages. To be honest, I have never found something that I'm happy with, because
yes, of course. This here is an example of the translation of verses, but at the same time, the topping up of the translation of a commentary. In all biblical translations, for example, you have the translation of the original text, and then you have the translation of the commentary. And here, commentary, but the reader who is not aware of the original language is going to be misled, because he will think that this is revealed language. It is not. It's the commentary of a human being. That, I think that this is not translation, since in principle, translation must be faithful. And this is not.
This is not. Yeah, and another question, perhaps, Reem, and then I will give the floor to the other participants. The Quran is a message to all creation, not only men and women. It is also a message to the jinns, to even other creatures. I don't know whether each one of these creations should interpret it the way to serve their needs. Perhaps we might be thinking of jinns also interpreting Quran in their own way. I think that the message is universal.
Not because if we talk about gender, we might be, I don't know, interested by having LGBTQIR.
Yes.
But that's. I mean, this is the thing. The Quran is not a text that is. It's an eternal text. It is supposed to be read and interpreted and translated. It's not for one person. It's not for one generation. It's not for one gender. It's, as Hammouda said, it's for all humanity. So as humans, even when we read the Quran, even the act of reading it, we read it in different ways. So it is normal that we translate it in different ways. The the main difference is how honest they are, how translators. And also there is the issue of ideology. Ideology is a massive factor when you are translating, and that we should not ignore. Whether you are a male or female or transgender, when you read a text, you read it according to your own ideology, your own abilities, your own thoughts. But I think what the most important thing is, what a translator should consider is the implications of what they're translating. If you are translating,
again, something else I've noticed that in Bible translation, for example, translation is being carried out by teams, not by individual translators, like in the case of the Quran. So, but Quran is mostly translated by individual translators. That's why we can go to some extremes by reflecting and serving their own ideologies and their own needs, whether they are slaves or women, or they have from the minority, to serve political needs.
But that's actually good with Quran, because some states are trying to control Quran translation, and that's a really good point, that people are free to translate it themselves.
I'm not arguing for the translation of the establishment or the mosque or some, but it has to be collaborative in a way, collaborative in teams. So I would like to go to Abir and then Muhammad Salah. Abir, you have the floor.
First, I would like to thank you, Dr. Reem, for being with us today. And just I want to know, while you are reading, you make your research about the translation of Quran, what are the main challenges that you have faced, and how shall we give a proper translation for God, as if not for gender equality, not he or she?
Okay.
I don't know.
Thank you. Muhammad Salah.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
So, when we talk about Islam and Quran, we have to admit that men, and by that referring to the masculine gender, had exercised their dominance through history, perhaps due to the fact that the God messengers were all males and so on. And we sure know how an ideology can blind one's perspective and interpretation. And perhaps I'll be taking us to another shore. In my opinion, I do believe women translating the Quran surely is and will result in different interpretation from what is done, different from what is done by male translation, since ideology and personal beliefs interferes. And here comes in my question. Belief can interfere with the neutrality and the faithfulness of the translator. So can a translation of the Quran made by an atheist or a non-believer, would it really have a total and more faithful interpretation? And the dilemma is that Quran and Islam is an ideology. So isn't detaching oneself from an ideology is the best way to stay objective and faithful to the source text? What is your input and thoughts on this? And thank you.
Thank you, Muhammad Salah. Salwa.
مساء الخير. سأطرح أسئلتي باللغة العربية، بما أننا نتحدث عن ترجمة القرآن، والقرآن أنزل باللغة العربية. أهلا وسهلا دكتورة ريم، سعداء بوجودك معنا اليوم. وفي الحقيقة أنت تطرحين موضوعا في غاية الأهمية والحساسية. في الحقيقة أنا أؤيد جدا قيام المرأة بترجمة القرآن. هذا شيء جيد، لا يجب أن يكون الأمر مقصورا على الرجال. ولكن هنا لي ملاحظة. لقد تحدثت عن فاطمة زايدة وترجمتها للقرآن. قلت أنها لم تكن تجيد اللغة العربية، وأنها قامت بترجمة ترجمة، أي أنها قامت بترجمة الترجمة التي ترجمت القرآن. أنا في الحقيقة ضد هذا الأمر. من وجهة نظري أن من يترجم القرآن يجب أن يكون مجيدا للغة العربية التي هي لغة الأصل الأوريجينال، وأن يكون قادرا على فهم النصوص القرآنية جيدا، وأن يتبحر في معانيها لكي يستخرج جوهر القرآن، وأن يفهم ويتفهم معانيه جيدا حتى يستطيع أن يقوم بالترجمة ترجمة صحيحة. فهناك مثال سوف أسوقه إليك. عندما تحدثت عن فاطمة زيدة وقلت في الجزئية التي تقول الرجال قوامون على النساء، لقد قامت بترجمة هذه الجملة بأن les hommes sont supérieurs aux femmes. في الحقيقة أن المسألة ليست أنهم أحسن من الستات، لا، هناك الرعاية، هناك المسؤولية. كلمة القوامة تعني معاني كثيرة. فعندما يأتي أجنبي ويرغب في فهم القرآن وفهم معانيه وفهم فحواه ويرى هذه الترجمة التي ليست دقيقة، سيكون هذا شيئا في الحقيقة أنا أجده شيء معيب. لماذا؟ لأنه يعطي صورة غير دقيقة وغير صحيحة عن مفهوم أو النظرة إلى المرأة أو العلاقة بين الرجل والمرأة في القرآن. هذا أولا تعقيبي على هذه الجزئية أو وجهة نظري. ولكن لدي سؤال إذا سمحت لي وإذا سمح لي الحاضرون. هل وأنت تدرسين الترجمات التي قامت بها أو التراجم التي قامت بها النساء للقرآن، هل قمت بعمل مقارنة بين التراجم التي قام بها الرجال وما ترجمته النساء؟ هل شعرت أن المرأة لديها حساسية أكبر؟ أنا هنا لست متحيزة للمرأة في الحقيقة، لكن أسأل هل لدى المرأة حساسية أكبر تجاه هذا النص القرآني أكثر من الرجل، أم أن هذه الحساسية متساوية بين الجنسين؟ لأنني نحن نتكلم عن الجندر ولا أريد أن يكون هناك تمييز بين الرجل والمرأة. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا سلوى. أوكي، إذن سمر.
Hello, everyone. Okay, nice. So first, I wanted to sincerely thank Dr. Hammouda and all the organizers, because these talks really made the time in quarantine insightful and productive. I also wanted to thank Dr. Hassen for the talk. So I just wanted to comment on the cover of Lala Bakhtiyar's translation. The one full
flowers.
Yes, there are breaks.
Flowers and colorful. Iranian, and so I just wanted to. Am I being heard?
Partially, Samar. There are breaks in your voice.
So I hope now it's working well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Go on.
So I'm going to make it quick. So I'm an Iranian, and I wanted to talk about Persian visual heritage on Quran. The painting that you saw is part of a painting style. It calls golomor into flower and bird. It is considered art in its own terms. So this type of painting was originally used for Quran's cover in Iran, and the practice dates back to 15th century. Nowadays, however, you can find it on different types of handicraft. That the colorful flowers are not just
I think we lost
to be interpreted as a feminine intervention of the translator, but but it is considered as an art in design.
Samar, we are struggling to receive you.
Designing or on cover.
Hello, Samar?
Here in Iran.
Just to, I'll just speak to Samar now. She's in contact with Bakhtiar, and she told me, and I actually wrote about this, her book cover, and she told me that it was a very good choice for her because it's both shows her Iranian heritage and also because of the the feminine in Western society. That's what it implies. So that was actually a very political choice from her part, both to show her heritage and her, just to stand out from the usual book covers that are usually green and flat, and there's nothing really attractive. And she, I don't know, are you in contact with Bakhtiar? She has, hello, Samar?
Hello, Samar?
I don't think she can hear us.
So I'm not sure that I'm being heard.
Oh, no.
There are breaks, yes. Anyway, let's take 2 more questions and then we are going to go back to this subject.
Better.
Yeah. Taqwa and then Wa'il bin Ali. Taqwa.
First, I'd like us to thank Ms. Dr.
I cannot hear.
I cannot hear too. Let's go to Wa'il. We'll come back to you, Taqwa, and we'll come back to you, Samar.
Aslama, Dr. Riem.
Hello, Aslama.
Yes. Well, when I saw the extract of Fatma Zaid, I really didn't saw a translation of the Quran. I saw distortion and manipulation. And I'm against using holy book to deliver your own messages and attitudes. And وأنزلناه قرآنا عربيا مبين. I think it's better to remain in Arabic than to being using in such a way to deliver your own messages.
Okay.
I think, yeah, thank you. Yes, over to you, Reem, to respond to these questions.
The first question about the challenges I faced when I was doing my research. So the challenges I was, and I'm still the only researcher working on women translators of the Quran. So there was no previous research, there were no resources. I spent a lot of time looking through encyclopedias, newspapers, just to find women translators of the Quran. I was really happy and lucky that I speak different languages, so it was easier for me to do research in different languages. And that's how I came to find Zaida's translation and then find the other translators. I also asked, a very good strategy is to ask colleagues and fellow researchers if they have seen anything that looks like a woman translator. And that's what actually led me to find the first translator and then find the others. The second question, I don't know about masculine dominance. I think I come back to the same thing. It's about the language. The language as develops, so the language develops all the time. And I think when language developed, now we see it more, especially in English. There is even in normal text, literary text. So people are trying to use more gender equal languages. And I think the 2 translations by Zalmeski and Bakhtiar are not just feminists, but I think they're also trying to adapt to the development of language in their own societies. And I think I mentioned that all women translators of the Quran that I've researched are Western converts to Islam. And the conversion process is a really big factor in their choices, because when you are convert, you are in between two cultures, two languages, two religions. So for them to be able to mediate between their previous religion, previous culture, and the new one they are adopting, they need to use different strategies. And I think for especially Zalmeski and Bakhtiar, language is a much more present issue, especially now. And that's why they use so many linguistic skills that we don't find in Zaida's translation. I don't know who asked about it's better that for a non-believer to translate the Quran. Actually, non-believers are also have their own ideology. It's not because it's a non-believer, it's going to be neutral.
If I may interfere, but he detaches himself from the Quran, from the Muslims' ideology. So I think it's the same way that a woman is translator or interpreting the Quran. She have the way she have a different perspective, a different interpretation is the same way for a non-believer or an atheist when he do an interpretation or translation of the Quran. So my question is whether a non-believer or an atheist detached from ideology is more neutral and more faithful to the translation or interpretation of the Quran.
But there are actually translations of the Quran by non-believers. If you see the history of Quran translation into English, the first word done by non-believers, they think they're non-believers, but actually they were much worse because they wanted to show that Islam is not the good religion. So there is nothing like there is no ideology. There is always an ideology. If there is not an ideology, there is your own agenda. So there is no human who can claim that he's neutral. The neutrality is not possible. Okay,
True.
maybe from your point of view, but not when you are translating. You cannot be neutral. You're always making choice. When you are interpreting, you're always making choice. There is nothing that is neutral. If you are neutral, you are silent. You don't do nothing.
True. Samar came back to us with a message. She said, quote, sorry about the voice quality. So I wanted to just point out that the cover of Bakhtiar's translation is part of Iranian painting heritage. The style is called, I think in Persian, kolakh wa maragh, which literally translates to flower and bird.
Yes.
This type of painting was originally used for Quran's covers in Iran, which dates back to 15th century. So it is not to be solely interpreted as a feminine intervention. How do you react to that, Reem?
Yes, I was telling her I was in contact with Bakhtiar, okay, and she explained to me that it's both ways. She used it for both reasons. It's not only feminine, but actually for people who don't know, when you are in a book shelf and you see this book, it's very attractive, and I think that's why she chose this book cover. It's both for her Iranian heritage and also because it is an attractive and most feminine cover as well.
Yeah, thank you. Let's go to Shayma Gizani.
Can I answer?
So there are other questions. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. So هذه باش سأجيب بالعربية بخصوص ترجمة فاطمة زايدة. أنا لما درست ترجمة فاطمة زايدة كما قلت من قبل صدمت لأني لم أتصور أن الإنسان سيحاول أن يترجم القرآن بهذه الطريقة، ولكن sorry Amelia
problem.
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. آسفة مرة أخرى. هيك حياة الأمهات صعب. بخصوص ترجمة فاطمة زايدة، فاطمة زايدة استعملت ترجمة أخرى لأنه هي ترجمة القرآن في القرن التاسع عشر. أوكي، في المدة ديك في كتير نساء ما كانوش عندهم can you sorry لازم واحد hello.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So I was saying, yeah, a lot of women did not have access to education at that time. Okay, so to be educated in Arabic in 19th century, it was almost impossible for women to be educated in Arabic, and that's why actually most translations, even by men at that time, were not done from the original text. It's only later that translations of the Quran were done by Muslims from the original Arabic. But most translations from the 15th century until the early 19th century, all translations were from previous translations. And Fatma Zaida did not have access to learn Arabic. Maybe she knew Arabic, but it was not enough for her to translate from the original. And I think she used a lot. She spoke like 5 languages, and she used them all to have an idea about the original text. But she also found out that all these translations were different, and I think she followed the same style as the previous translators, and she put her own ideas as others did. I know people cannot see this as a translation, but that's what was happening at the time. Now, I know people would like to say, okay, which is a better translation, which is a more faithful translation. This is not my research. My research is to find out who translated the Quran and why women made these choices. So when I found out how she translated it, I went back to her era, and I found out that there was a lot of political problems, a lot of social problems. There was wars, and women were taken slaves, and women slaves were being sold and bought and tortured. And actually, she revolted against this situation, and because she was in the position to intervene, she found out that her best way to help herself and other women is to translate the Quran. So that's about Zaida. يسأل مقارنة بين حساسية بين الرجل والمرأة. Yes. So الحساسية هو الآية آية اللي تخص وضربوهن. أنا شخصيا ما عنديش رأي خاص، لكن حتى لو أقرأها ما أشوفش إن فيها ضرب ولا فيها حتى عنف ضد النساء. لكن أكثر النساء اللي ترجموا القرآن حاولوا إنهم يخفوا من الشعور إنه فيه مقارنة بين الرجال والنساء. لكن اللي لاحظته إنه النساء اللي في أمريكا وضحوا أكثر حساسية، لكن في نساء مثلا في السعودية وفي إيران ما كانش فيهم حساسية، بالعكس ترجمتهم كانت أكثر ميلة لصف الرجال. في برشا نساء ترجموا قوامون على أنها superior or protectors or شنو آخر
perhaps guardians.
شو؟
guardians.
guardians واحدة حتى في واحدة كان control, they have the right to control women's affairs. So, فيه 3 نساء اللي في السعودية اللي ترجموا القرآن حطوا إنه الرجال they are guardians and controllers of women's affairs. Okay, so هنا مش مسألة إنك مرأة أو رجل، لكن فينا تعيش اللي يعيش في أمريكا عندهم حرية أكثر، عندهم النساء عندهم حرية أكثر من يحكوا. لو كان في تونس نتوقع باش يكون فيه أكثر، لكن في السعودية وفي إيران ما كانش فيه معناه مجال إنهم يحاولوا إنه يبينوا إنه في حساسية تجاه النساء.
Good.
Is there another question?
Yes, we have Taqwa. Back to Taqwa.
So
Hello?
my question, hello.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We do.
Okay. So my question was, do you think that for someone who is born and raised in an Islamic society to be exposed to the rules of Islam and experience those values upheld by the Holy Quran, to have more advantages in translating this book more than someone who is Muslim but did not live in such society? And thank you.
Thank you. Shiraz?
Yes, yeah.
Can we take 2 or 3 questions? Yes, Reem. Shiraz, Manar? Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. I'm sorry, Kabila, Monsieur تقص عليا charge and I'm in the middle of nowhere, as I said. But my question is translation a way to soften and adjust the bad things in Quran, if you want?
No.
You, Sarah, Tabli? Sarah? Okay, we move on to Nadir.
السلام عليكم.
أهلا وسهلا.
أهلا وسهلا.
Hello.
Hello, nice to meet you, sir. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. Mike, first I would like to thank you for this presentation. Second, I would like to draw your attention about the resources you had already mentioned in your presentation.
Sorry?
Stating, I would like
the sources, did you mean the sources?
Right, the sources she based on her research.
Yes, can you please speak to the mic?
Yes, I'm speaking to the mic.
Yeah.
Is it clear now?
Now it's better, yes.
Yes, great. I think it's worth to...
Hello? We'll be back to Nadir. We'll back to Nadir. Yes, can you take these questions, Reem?
Yes, Taqwa, she was asking about the Muslim translators raised and born in Muslim societies and those raised and born in Western countries. Of course, that has really major impact because translators, of course, they're influenced by the environment, but where they live. And for Muslim women, as I said, there was a translation by an Egyptian translator who was supposed to be published a long time ago. I think that translation was censored, and I'm not sure if it's going to be published. And I think also in Western societies, there are a lot of encouragement for women to think and to read for themselves, while in Muslim countries, for the moment, there is still a lot of struggle, both political and social, and economical. And I think it's difficult for someone, especially female, to take on a translation of the Quran and to implement new ideas and new changes. But I hope in the future we'll have more translations by women from Muslim countries, because that's the only thing that is missing in the market now, is a translation by a Muslim woman from an Islamic country, apart from Iran. Shiraz asked about, is a translation a way to soften or adjust the bad things in the Quran? I don't think there are any bad things in the Quran. The Quran is the Quran, and for me personally, I haven't found anything bad. It's a matter of interpretation and reading. If you read the text, it reflects, it's your own education, your own knowledge, your own ideology that informs you. A translator in the first place is a reader. And also the Quran is, I mean, I cannot say, tell people what is the Quran. Everybody has his own perception of it. But for me, there's nothing bad or wrong in it.
Good. We will take Shayma Gizani and Sarah. So let's take first Sarah, because we lost her early on. Sarah Tabli.
Yes. Good evening, all. Good evening, Rima.
Yes.
Thank you for giving us your time and sharing your knowledge and experience with us. Well, what I want to say is that you talked at the beginning of your talk. You said that you think that translating is not about being right or being wrong, and not about being bad or being good. But I think, in my opinion, or don't you think that the sacred discourse were there from the beginning, like just to show us what is right and what is wrong? And if anyone comes and try to their translation, or even like male or female translators are giving us a wrong translation, doesn't that like hurt the sacred discourse? Like it's the translation, if it's wrong, or I think it's not wrong or good, when we are talking about, for example, literature, for example, text. But when we come to sacred discourse, or even in pragmatic text, you know, I'm translating student, and they are always our teachers and all. They are always talking and telling us about being loyal, about being truthful with the text we have. Except I said earlier in the literature text. So what do you think about that? Another thing, just please, I want to say...
Quickly, please, Sarah.
Sorry?
Quickly, please.
Okay, I'm so sorry. So there's still something special in the Arabic language when we are talking about, for example, the gender. We find in Quran, for example, when Allah speaks about mu'minun, we all know that it's both female and male. And anyone who tries like to come and say that give superiority or give authority to men over women, I think the reason is their ignorance. Even for like the word qawamun, like you already said. If anyone comes and translates it by superior, this is because of their ignorance. And even like in a hadith. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think the point is clear. Let's go to Shayma.
Hello,
Shayma
everyone.
Gizani, yes. Hi.
Hello, Dr. Hammouda. Hello, Dr. Rima. Well, let me first express how honored and how grateful we are today to have you with us, especially that Dr. Hammouda mentioned you several times in class as a Tunisian pride and as a great example of a successful woman. Yes.
No, thank you.
Well, my question is the following. How could an interpreter, woman or man, or any gender, translates the metaphors in Quran with being faithful and loyal to the original text, with guarding the differences between the Arabian and the European or American culture, climax, etc.? I may illustrate the example of Bardan wa Salaman, or we have the term in Arabic يثلج الصدر. How could it be translated in English with the, I mean, should we translate it as warmth the heart, or should we translate the with keeping the meaning, or should we replace it with another one just to keep it really should we keep the metaphor as it is, or should we change the meaning to make it a clear point and more let's say
it's clear, and to bring it closer to the target language reader.
understanding.
We
Thank
got
you.
it. Thank you. Yes, Reem.
Just a minute, just a minute. Yes, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm back. Okay. Is there another question, or should I answer this one?
I think for the time being, that's all, and I'm worried about time because time is almost up. So
Okay.
can you take these questions and then we will see.
Okay, so about Sarah, she asked me about what I said about there is no wrong or right translation. Yeah, that's true for me, because what's happened, people always judge. So me as a researcher, I discovered if you want to be a good researcher, you cannot judge what is right and what is wrong translation, because you make a choice because you have thought about it. But for me, there is a bad or good translation. I explain because the bad translation that has bad implications on people's lives, on people's positions, and that's what I mean when there is a good translation, like what Bakhtiar proposed. For me, that's a good translation because she is preventing violence against women. Okay, while others, actually in the same verse, they prescribe the different ways of beating women. And that's what I mean. There is a bad or good translation, because every translation has an impact. Okay, and I'm judging on the impact of the translation of other people's lives. So when you are translating, you have to think how this is going to influence the reader, how this is going to influence people's lives. Okay, that's what I mean by not wrong or right, but bad or good. Okay. The other question, the question about loyalty and truthfulness. Okay, I always think about this, but I think you can be loyal and truthful, but who are you loyal to? Who are you truthful to yourself or to other people? So when you are translating, you have to decide if you want to be truthful to yourself as a translator, then you translate the way you think it should be translated. If you want to be loyal to a political institution, to an ideology, then you translate to that ideology. You cannot be loyal and truthful to both. Okay. And this issue of loyalty, truthfulness, and originality, they're really, really hard, because it's, I mean, I don't know how can someone be truthful to himself. For me, if I'm translating a religious text, translating a word that is really, really hard, and I have to choose between being how I understand it or how another scholar or another translator has translated that word. So I have to choose whether I translate it according to my beliefs or to what other Muslim scholars or traditional scholars have interpreted. So you have to decide being loyal and truthful to who? Yourself or to other people. Okay. I think Shaima asked about cultural references. Yes. So when translating cultural references, yes. So this is always a rule. You have to translate to the target culture reference. I remember when I was still studying in MA, and there is a famous sketch here in the UK about a parrot who died, and the actor explained so many times how the parrot died, and the parrot here has a very cultural connotation, and people are used to it. And then the teacher told me, how would you translate the parrot into Arabic, into Tunisian context? And I thought, I think I'll translate it as a sheep, because most people will be used to sheep fil Eid rather than a parrot, to explain the notion of dying or notion of slaughtering. So for children or for us, we are more used to sheep who are slaughtered rather than a parrot, which is, some people would never have seen or have heard about the parrot. So you have always to follow the cultural reference of the target language. Okay.
Great. So I will give Salwa Al Batut the floor, and she will be the last, I think, to be given the floor. Go ahead.
Okay. If you please, Dr. Reem, I would like to know the name of the Egyptian man who translated the Quran, as I am Egyptian, so I am curious to know who is this man.
No, it's a woman who never actually published. I could not. It was in 2007 I found out about her, and since then everything about her has really vanished. So if you actually can help me find, that would be really nice. I would like to know what happened to her. That was in the newspapers, newspapers, but I have never been able to find anything about her after that.
Okay, and I ask you to translate yourself the Quran. As you speak Arabic, French, and English, you can translate from Arabic into English or French as you like.
Yeah. I'm not going to attempt to translate because there are enough translations, and I'm very busy at the moment, as you can see.
Yes, I see.
Okay, so thank you very much, Reem, for everything, for this very insightful presentation about women's translation of the Quran. And I think that here again, it is really showing the necessity to translate with interpretation, and interpretation varies greatly depending on the context, depending on who is translating, and that interpretation you cannot impose it on others. This is the way how you interpret it. So there is a risk here if you impose interpretation, but also there is another risk at the other end if you let everyone to interpret a message the way he or she likes. We will be driven to some sort of disorder without any constraints or norms. There have to be some norms we should abide by, and the norms and the rules are also serving some sort of standardization. We have to engage in a standardized translation where each one's opinion has to be reflected in that final product, so that no one will be left behind or feeling excluded or marginalized. Translation of sacred texts is really sensitive, because of the nature of it. It is sacred, means the author is not a human being like any other text, especially for the Quran. Perhaps it is less true for the Bible, because the Bible is written by perhaps the disciples telling the story of Jesus and what he said. But Quran is the word of God, and how to translate it. That's why so many scholars, they argue that the Quran cannot be translated, and they argue for the untranslatability of the Quran, but they offer another window to translate the meanings, and they put it in the plural, despite the fact that I don't like the meaning to be put in the plural. It is one meaning, the meaning of Quran. And here the meaning of Quran, it will be again subject to tafsir or interpretation, and tafsir needs a fatwa. So I wanted to ask you about the fatwa role here. The fatwa is the religious, the scholarly, informed opinion about an issue to make something equivalent to something else, like the example of parrot and sheep, and the things that you need to slaughter for sacrifice. I think there are certain rules. You cannot take any animal, but there are very strict rules in here, and this needs a fatwa. Certain things are very clear in the Quran, but certain other things are really fuzzy, and they need ijtihad. And ijtihad is interpretation. Here, whether so means the translator in this case has to be an interpreter and has to be a scholar. A scholar. And we had a lecture in the morning by a philosopher, and he said that the translator has to be a scholar of that subject. In philosophy, for example, translating Heidegger. I think you attended this scholar by Professor Muhammad Mahjoub. So here, I think it is really problematic in a way, and I really liked the way you approached your research. It is descriptive, and you are not dragged to any of the two extremes. You are observing, and this is really a sound methodology in research. Don't make judgments, despite the fact that the issue discussed is very sensitive and the text is sacred. So I think the discussion, this is my personal impression, the discussion and debate was very informative. Really, it is a memorable one, and we are going to continue this discussion in future talks, especially with the guest speaker I mentioned earlier, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. Yes, please go ahead.
Just want to tell you that I think I told you I'm doing more. I have 2 projects on women translators of religious texts, but in all other religions. So I'm collaborating with a colleague from France, and we are looking for women translators everywhere. So if anyone knows about anyone or would like to be part of it, we are publishing a book and a volume. So if anyone would like to be involved, please get in touch. And
the associates in my class mostly are women, so up to 90%.
So
you have a very good mind to explore over there.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much, Reem, for accepting our invitation again and for being a charming guest. Bye-bye, and take good care of yourselves, ladies and
Good
gentlemen.
luck, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.